it's almost like, I don't know, it's almost like a computer. It's like, I'm processing, you can't press any of the keys right now. And once they're like, it's like
my little swirly do is going.
I'm like, the spinning beach ball. Yeah. It's like, don't bother trying to click anything right now because it ain't gonna work.
And it will actually jam things up and make it like
exactly
what would have taken 5 minutes is now going to take 2 hours because you had to click the button 15 times.
And you have to wait for like 26 windows to appear, disappear, minimize, whatever. Hello, and welcome to Well Shit. It really is that simple. I'm Claire.
And I'm Serena. On this podcast, we help you to understand about your 12 universal needs, why they are currently not being well met,
how to meet them in ways that work for you, and how to consistently do so in quick, easy, and simple ways that fit seamlessly into your life.
We'll also help you to understand how doing so will have a positive ripple effect in literally every area of your life.
If you like what you hear, please support us on Patreon.
And enjoy the show.
Hello.
Hey, everyone.
So we've got most of the glitter cleared up for now, I think.
I mean, like a legitimate, like, good portion of it.
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be glitter found for a long time to come still, but I mean, such is the gift of glitter. It's the gift that keeps on giving.
Yes.
Whether you like it or not.
Over and over again. The pile that was like under my butt was fascinating. Though.
It was impressive. It was really impressive. I do like the fact that I can actually gesture with my hands now without being like mesmerized by them. I'm like, I think that I've managed to lose all the stuff that was in my hairline.
What's going to distract me this episode?
Excuse me. There'll be something. Like, I mean, we know that. It's just a question of what.
That was literally like, ooh, something shiny. It's on my hand. I feel like that was a moment like I get where babies are at most of the time. Like,
ooh, I mean,
babies are influenced adults.
Influenced adults?
Under the influence. Like, I don't know. That seems something that would be like trip fun.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that. Like people being like, ooh,
yeah. Like
I saw a video. I think it was last week on the like people who've like coming out of anesthesia and the funny things that they say. And like, 1 minute they're crying, the next minute they're laughing, and I can't think there was one. Oh, that was it. There was this girl who. She was like pretending to shoot her brother was like sat on the other couch and she was like this and he went ugh. And she was like, I've murdered my brother, like what am I gonna say at his funeral? I'm sorry, I murdered my brother. It was the funniest thing. It was just, I loved it.
Ironically, when I come out of anesthesia, most of the time I pitch whatever business I'm in.
Oh, really?
Like, yeah, it's been something I've always done. Like, I'll get calls after from the nurses, like when I worked at the casino, and be like, hey, do you remember me? I'm like, I do. And I remember like, right. And I'll remember the conversations. Like, I come out of anesthesia differently than a lot of people. Like, I come out running, but like, that's when I'm making like my networking connections. It's so weird.
I mean, I know we're talking about our business strategy for the next year. I'm not sure having a bunch of surgery should be part of the strategy. No. I'm just saying. I mean, while you might make some good connections, it's not a strategy I'm suggesting we employ.
I mean, I've given some people some good trips because they actually have like, I mean it when I'm like, hey, give me a call because of this. I'm like, yeah, no, that means like if you call me, I'll be like, okay. But yeah, no, that's not going into the business plan for 2023. No.
It's not.
It's just, not. But I just think it's funny. Some people will think that they killed their brother with finger guns, and I'm like, so can I get you in here?
Oh dear. Yeah, I can imagine you being in that. Mm-hmm. I can also imagine you be like slightly slurry, be like, mm-hmm. Oh, I can help you.
And I tend to be very open emotionally. It's like I do the like, I appreciate, like, do you know that I appreciate you? Like, my doctor, I don't know if he enjoys or gets uncomfortable by how much, like,
he's certainly used to you by now.
He is used to me by now. Nothing really surprises him. What is she saying now?
It's like, I remember when I broke my back and they had me on gas and air. And I was like, I mean, we would laugh and we were telling stories in the ambulance, because I'm one of these people where I'm like, I might be in a lot of pain, but I want to try and make the situation as good as it can be
for everybody involved.
Right, exactly. And the one of the paramedics, I remember, like, I was like, oh my God, I'm like, I love you, I appreciate you. And she was like, okay, I'll come back later when you're not high on gas and air. And then I was like, you don't know me. I'm going to say the same thing if I'm stone cold sober.
And that's the thing, because we are very, like,
yeah.
I'm one of those people, if I feel love for you, even if it's like, I love your shirt, like, I'm going to tell you. And like, if I'm really...
I've known you 3 minutes. I love you. Like,
yeah.
I mean, yeah.
There is something I love about you. Like, I don't throw it around. Like, I don't say it to like stroke people's ego, but when I'm
feeling it.
yeah, and when I'm feeling nothing, I'm feeling it a lot more. I want to make sure
when
you
I'm feeling
know.
nothing, I'm feeling everything.
Yeah, I get all the feels when I have none of the feels.
Oh my goodness. Anyway, anesthesia aside, we're talking about...
Is that not what the episode's about today?
I mean, it could be quite a fun one to do. I mean...
Put it in the planning notes.
So today begins our conflict series. So, I mean, humans have conflict. Like, that's just part of life. When we are doing life, we're going to end up in conflict. The thing about it is that I think that, and this is something I wanted to kind of bring into today's episode, is that when we think about conflict, we think about like big, like World War III, it's the end of the world style conflict, right?
Yeah, or at least even in like our own like worlds, it's like the bottom is gonna fall out, it's gonna blow up from the inside.
We're talking like relationship ending conflict or something like that, like big. And the reality is that conflict can be very small. And if we resolve it and deal with it when it's very small, I see you reaching. Go on. Go get him. Oh, is he stuck? Oh, no. The niggle monster's stuck. Oh, yay.
Oh, we did not deglitter him.
Oh, oops.
Oh, look, we were twinsies. He has the same little under the eye thing.
Like, I linked you two of them exactly like you did. That's funny.
Aww. Oh, I love you. I love you too, niggle monster.
Twinning with the niggle monster.
Well, when you're not niggly.
Well, that's the thing, is that all of those small little conflicts are the niggles. And unless
it's like glitter.
Just keep showing up. No matter how much you think you've dealt with it, it's going to keep coming back.
Until you completely eliminate
address it. Good metaphor. I like it. And so this is the thing, is that when we're talking about the conflict in the conflict series, it's really important for us to realize that these conflicts could be just a conflict of needs, like the conflict in the preference for how we want to get our needs met. Like, I want to get my needs met this way, you want to get your needs met that way. Those two seem to be in conflict with each other. How do we navigate those conflicts? So it's like, yes, this can be employed, and it's very, very helpful and very beneficial. What we're talking about today can be employed in these like big, like the world is ending style conflicts, of which, I mean, we've both had several in our lifetime, so we can speak from personal experience. But I think that it's important to recognize where niggles are conflicts, and often when niggles are there with another person, that's a form of conflict, because the niggles I mean, conflict is basically what happens when different people are experiencing trauma through being around another person, i.e. being around this person or what they're doing or not doing is impacting my needs negatively. We've got a trauma episode coming up where we will kind of go through it. I actually think we went through it on another episode recently. We did the first one where I kind of meandered around because I created like 26 more traumas, styles and types of trauma, actually live on the podcast. Not really, there are only 6. And then I think we reiterated them on a previous, on a podcast between the two. We'll put the link to that in the show notes underneath. And I've completely forgotten. Oh yeah, so trauma. So that's where the conflict is coming, is because there are traumas being experienced. Now, it may not be intentional. Here's the thing. Impact over intention, remember. You might not mean to do it. You might not intend to do it. But if somebody else's needs are being negatively impacted, that is where the conflict is coming in. Or where both people's needs are being negatively impacted, that's where the conflict's coming in. And those niggles are those needs being negatively impacted, not being addressed. So it's important to recognize that you can bring this in when you're talking about small conflict. You can bring it in when we're talking about big conflict and anything in between. Ultimately, this is about how do you use the needs lens? How do you utilize an understanding of needs to navigate conflict in a more constructive way, and in a way which is going to minimize the impact and the fallout for everybody involved. Mm-hmm. So I think that when we are talking about conflict, what we want to do, the first place we want to do is like, how do we actually deal with a conflict via needs? That's what we're talking about today. So the series is a conflict series. Today we're talking about how do we deal with this conflict via needs. And I think that one of the things that is really important to recognize is what I was just speaking about, which is that conflict comes when needs are being impacted. And when needs are being impacted, that's a type of trauma. So the niggles, those small impacts, are those I forgot the first type of trauma. Slight trauma. Thank you. I know it begins with an S. Yes. That's why I love not doing this on my own, because somebody else can remember the shit that I forget when I forget it. So it may be that in those moments it's a slight trauma, which is where those kind of little niggles are. And it might be that it's a severe trauma. And severe trauma is going to be the ones where it's like, this is big kind of big conflict. But what we want to do is we want to be able to put a needs lens on them and figure out how do we navigate through this situation. Because what tends to happen, or what a lot of people do when conflict happens, is that one person negatively impacts the other person's needs, i.e. causes the trauma to the other person. The other person, whose needs have been negatively impacted, so their needs are compromised, react from their unmet needs. And they then negatively impact the first person's needs. And they then react from having their needs being met, and they impact the other person's needs, etc., etc., etc. And it gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's like it starts off with you left the top off the milk, and the next thing it's like we're talking about. Yeah, it feels like it's World War III. Like it's like the end of our relationship.
Oh, right. When you go from the cover off the milk to divorce.
Yes, exactly. That's often what happens. And we will do an upcoming podcast on the drama triangle and the different roles that are involved, because it's not quite as simple as that. That is a very simplistic view of it. In the context of what we're going to do today, we'll leave it at that. But there are other layers to it. So we will come back to this relationship argument thing, and you'll see how the drama triangle adds another layer to it, which really does open a lot of people's eyes and be like, oh yeah, this is different, this is helpful, this is going to help as far as our conflict is concerned. So we will come back to that. But for now, we're going to look at it at a very simplistic level, which is just simply, you are negatively impacting my needs, I'm negatively impacting your needs, blah, blah, blah. And this is ping pong that happens in between. Now, the thing is that what we want to do is we want to find a way of navigating through this conflict in such a way that it minimizes the amplifying of the situation. Because that's what tends to happen, is that one person, the unmet need creates this reaction, and the reacting from that unmet need, normally there's an amplification with it. It's not just like, I poked your arm, you poked my arm, you poked your arm, it doesn't stay on that kind of level.
It's kind of like that. I feel like that's an interesting example, because it went to more children doing that, but it's usually poke, push, punch, punch, and it escalates like that
very quickly. And that's the thing, is that and what happens is that when our unmet needs are the ones that are pulling the strings, things do escalate very quickly, because there's a visceral reaction in our system. Our system is reacting to our needs being unmet, because our needs being unmet, depending which needs they are dependent on our very survival. So we react from that survival standpoint. And because so many of us have got compromised needs anyway, it's not like we talk about in terms of the Star Trek shields. Like, it's not like, oh, there's a little bit of impact, oh, my shield's been dented, I need to do something to meet that. Most people have got no shields. Most people half their hull's been blown apart. The engine's like held together with string and duct tape. And
they have a paper clip up in front of them. They're like, okay, hit this spot right here.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And so when we get impacted by other people, our wounds of our unmet needs, our existing unmet needs get triggered. So it's not just, oh, okay, this person has said, I don't know. Like if somebody says to me, you don't know what you're talking about, I'm going to be like, okay.
We can pretend that's true.
Well, if they talk about it at a general level, you don't know what you're talking about. Chances are that's not true. I mean, just check with the US government. Exceptional ability. Well, the only one in the world who can do what I do. National interest. Like I mean, I kind of know what I'm talking about, generally speaking. Now, it might be with respect to a specific situation, which I don't have knowledge of, in which case I might be like, okay, explain it to me, help me to understand. So I'm going to be curious in that situation. But if someone came up to me and was like, you don't know jack about needs, I'm going to be like, okay. I hear what you're saying. I'm not going to be like firing back, because the thing about it is, I know about needs. I know my value as far as this is concerned. I know my skill set. I know my knowledge. And I've had it verified by new. It's not like, oh, I'm just like got this idea like I'm amazing at needs, and it's not. It's like all I've got in my head is those people on who like show up on America's Got Talent who are like, oh my God, I'm such a good singer, and then you hear them, I'm like, why has nobody ever told you? Like,
because everybody's telling them, oh, you're such a good singer. Like keep doing that.
Like independently verified from some reliable sources. Like this is not just, oh, well, my best friend told me I'm good at this, so I am good at this. I mean,
I'm good at giving advice.
But this has come from like verifiable, objective sources. I mean, part of the visa application was to get like experts and professionals to verify I know what I'm talking about. So yeah, I mean, I know I am solid and confident in that. So,
and I'm going to put in there too, you meet your own needs consistently. So you're not looking for somebody's, acknowledgement or like any of those things. Like,
I don't need that for me to feel good about myself.
Right. And a lot of people do. And that's why they get like, you don't know what you're talking about. Fuck you. I don't know what I'm talking about. Like, and it's like, cause it's the personal power. It's the value. It's
all the things.
And sometimes it's all the needs. And that's when it's, when it's all of the needs, and kind of like what I was thinking with the whole, push punch type of deal. It's like, things come in as it's coming up, like all of a sudden, like the poke, and then it's like, well, I'm gonna push you harder, and then I'm gonna punch you. And it's like there's a personal power thing. It's oh, I'm over you, and then there's the value. But like I'm like, that's not showing that you value me, you punching me, like, and it's, I mean, when it gets layered and like all of a sudden all 12 are like ding ding ding, and not, no, those were the dong
those
dong
are the dong dong dongs. It's like dong dong dong. Like, no, this is not good. Yeah, that's exactly right. Like, so if someone came up to me and said that, like, you're not going to trigger my value need in terms of what I do for a living. If Joe Nobody, who I don't know on the, it's really funny because I say Joe Nobody and I'm like, I'm thinking about Joe comes into mind. Joe somebody. Joe Somebody. He's Joe Somebody. This is Joe Nobody. So Joe Nobody, who I don't know, walks up to me on the street and goes, you don't know jack about needs. I'm going to be like, okay. Like, I won't need to prove that I know about needs, because I know about needs. It doesn't matter. Like, you're not going to trigger an unmet need in me around that thing that will cause me to react. Most of the time, I'm going to be like, my mental process is, okay, I don't know who you are. I don't really care what you think about me. I know where I stand. So I'm just going to be like, okay, and walk off. Like that's pretty much, in most situations, that's probably what I would do.
You are welcome to your opinion.
Like, okay, we can pretend that's true. I mean, that's one of my favorite phrases. But yeah, I mean, that you're not going to trigger an unmet need in me. Now, if somebody come up to me, I don't know. Okay, here's a good example. It's a really bad example, and it gives you an idea about some of the toxic relationships I've had. But it's a good example of what we're talking about right now.
So good it's bad, or so bad it's good.
So bad it's a good example of what we're trying to tell, but it's super bad. So I was in a very, very toxic relationship, maybe many, many years ago. We're talking 10 years ago plus. more than 10 years ago, I think now, with a person who was emotionally abusive. Let's just call it what it is. And I there was a point in time where I had put on a little bit of weight. And we all know that the conditioning that we have as women around having to look, our value being in how we look and how attractive we are. And so our conditioning around that causes like it amplifies the compromise to our value need. It's not just, oh, well, I'm carrying a few extra pounds, my clothes don't fit. Like there's a value piece associated in that. There's an emotional piece associated with that. There's a personal power piece associated with it. There's lots of things that are associated with that. We were going through a phase where we weren't in the best place possible. And I'll be honest, we both put on some weight. Now I'd put on maybe around 7 pounds, like half a stone.
Look at you using pounds before stones. Usually it's stones, and I just kind of look at them like,
my internal US to English translator kicked in and went, you got to do both. I mean, in fairness, we should be doing kilos, but I can't. I've grown up with pounds and stone. I've grown up with stone.
I just got used to the whole stone thing. Like, don't throw. I mean,
kilos is metric. That's what everybody should be using because it's so much easier. But like, I know. I don't get me wrong. I have no idea what I weigh in kilos, so I'm completely on board as far as that's concerned.
Joe's tried to have the metric conversation with me a couple of times.
Really?
And I'm like,
Anyway, I put on maybe about 7 pounds, which is half a stone. He'd put on about 3 stone. So what's that? 7 times
24?
6.
Oh,
I don't know.
42?
Yeah, and we got there. I mean, significantly different in terms of what we put on weight. Not that this is relevant. Let me just like confirm and like explicitly say that the amount doesn't matter. The fact that he put on weight too doesn't matter. None of this matters to this situation. The fact that I put on weight in any way, shape or form doesn't matter to this conversation. I remember we were out for dinner one night and we were having a conversation about our intimate relationship and our intimacy within our relationship. And he basically told me that I was too fat to want to have sex with, which gives you a kind of an idea about how great a guy this was. I mean, like, whatever you have to think about these sorts of things, that's toxic. That's not a good way of operating, and certainly not with somebody that you supposedly love. Part of the abusive dynamic that we were in. Now, because I had put on weight and I wasn't feeling good about myself at that point in time, and we're going back like pre-needs work at this point, so I wasn't meeting my own needs, definitely not. And I was already feeling insecure about that. Him saying that crushed me because it not only triggered my value need, it triggered a wounding I already had and a trauma I already had about my worth with respect to my my weight. And it also compromised my love and connection need and personal power. And like, you name it, it was like dong, 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 dong across the board. Like it was like hit after hit after hit after hit. And that's one of those situations where if it's landing on a trigger that we already have, landing on a wound that we already have, the amplification is like, we're not just going to respond to what's being said in that moment. It's not just this that we're responding to. We're responding to every other instance of that has compounded that wound. We're going to respond to how we're already feeling about it. We're already feeling some kind of way about it. And then when somebody else comes along and goes, oh yeah, like,
I see that hole. Let me make it bigger.
Absolutely. Does that hurt? Let me poke it. That's basically what's happening. And I mean, again, intention, impact, doesn't matter what the intention was. The impact was to land on a wound that I already had. And so I wasn't just reacting to what was said, I was reacting to my unmet needs. And then that compounded those unmet needs, so it got amplified. So this is one of the things that kind of comes, is that this is one of the reasons that the amplification often happens, is because we're not, generally speaking, meeting our needs well. And we're living in a society or are in situations which are compromising our needs all the time. Like we've talked about the value need and the not enough stuff, like we're bombarded by messages by that. So a lot of the times these conflicts escalate quickly, and a lot of the escalation is coming because this need boom, that gets amplified, that unmet need. And that then it's from there, that's the energy we're coming back from, is like and a lot of the time it's like, there's an element in terms of the personal power thing. And this is not what personal power really is. Personal power is our internal personal power. But a lot of people try to get their personal power met by having power over somebody else. So it's like, you've hurt me, watch, let me show you what that is. And I'll fire back and I'll try and hurt you. And they'll then do the same thing back. And that's how it escalates and gets worse and worse. That's another way it escalates, not only just the need kind of getting more impacted and more amplified in the process.
Well, and also, where are you at in that moment in general with your needs? Like, are you fulfilled, or are you already in a space that's not great from a needs standpoint? Yeah. And then you have this thing that shouldn't be said anyway, and that thing then triggers an old wound, and you know what I mean? Like,
well, you go back to the Star Trek shit, like, we've got no shield, there's half the hull missing. If you end up basically firing something at the bit that connects the engine to the ship and the engine goes bye-bye, like, I mean, that has a significant impact. That's basically what we're talking about. Like, if you're hitting something that is already vulnerable because there is already a wounding there, it's going to create an amplification. So one of the things that is most important when it comes to dealing with conflict is to first and foremost be consistently meeting your own needs. Like, we go back to the Star Trek, like that conflict, if you imagine it like an actual physical conflict between two spaceships, like if someone's like, even if they don't mean to, it's like they accidentally left their laser gun on and somebody knocked it and it's ended up aimed at your ship. They might not be meaning to hit you. They might just accidentally be firing lasers in your direction.
Somebody just sat on the button and had no clue.
And then didn't realize, like, it's on mute. Like, there's no sound effects associated with it. So it's like, it's firing your direction. They don't even realize it's firing in your direction, but it's coming at you. Now, if you have a ship that is intact because your needs are being well met and your shields are at full at 100%, then if something comes and it hits you, even accidentally, you're just the shields are gonna take a little bit of a hit. And once you realize, okay, my shields, like, so all I've got in my head is like the Star Trek thing, like shields at 90% or whatever. Like, it's almost like you get that feedback, like the shields.
Somebody get us a voice, like I feel like we need one of those
sound effect
machine.
Like, shields at 90%. It's like, okay, shields are at 90%. What do I need to do to build those shields back up again and put them back to 100%? So that's the first thing, is that you want to be maintaining your ship and your shields. Like, and how you do that is you consistently are taking care of your own needs, and you're making sure that you have we've talked about resilience before, and I think resilience was the episode in which we talked about the trauma. I think might be the ones where we listed the traumas. There was the resilience episode. Is that the resilience is like how quickly can we recover our needs to where they were beforehand? Well, if they're well met and we've got a lot of resources, then they take a little hit. We put some of that resource back into meeting the needs, back up to 100% again. So the first thing that will help you with conflict is to be taking care of your needs on a regular basis. The second thing is to use a needs lens in the moment that you get impacted. Now, it's really important to recognize that this takes some effort to do. It takes some noticing of, like, when somebody says or does something that impacts you, i.e. some kind of conflict between them and you, some kind of trauma being inflicted on you by their behavior, lack of behavior, what they've said, not said, etc. It's tough, because what ends up happening is that unmet needs create a feeling in us. Like, there is a mental, emotional, and physiological response when that happens. And that's part of the reason that a lot of the time people suggest that when you're in this sort of a situation, you take a moment to pause and you take a moment to breathe. Because once something has hit you, your immediate reaction is going to be because you're in we're going to get into this in the trauma episode that's coming up. You're going to be in one of the trauma responses. So you might be in fight or flight. So fight, when the trauma hits, you go into that trauma response of fight, you fire back before you've even thought. So it's like that laser beam is like coming at you. And like, as I said, they accidentally sat on the button and they didn't even realize it's firing at you. And you've gone back at them with both cannons blazing. And the next thing you know, in a full scale intergalactic war. And it all came because someone sat on a button by mistake. And the other person fired back without going, dude, hello. Did you know? Could you cut it out, please? Like,
I mean, think of how many times like we could have had a galactic war between us over like sitting on a button, and if one of us hadn't been like, all right, this doesn't feel quite right, or this is really out of it. Like, I mean, we call each other out on that stuff to the point where it's just what we do. Like, there's no, and I think that's probably part of it. A lot of people feel like when they call somebody, you know, like if they name something, they're starting a conflict and it's automatically going to be a fight. And it's like, no, we're just going to talk. And
well, and I mean, it's worth going back and listening to the friendship series where we talk about like having hard conversations and how to have the hard conversations. Like that's part of this, is that we've had the hard conversations. So that, I mean, we had one, was it yesterday?
Yeah.
And Serena was like, hey, I just need to clear this thing with you. It's like, this is this. And I'm like, oh, I didn't even know about that. Of course, like knowing that, this is how you would feel about that. Like we had a conversation about it. And the key thing is that what happened was when the impact came to Serena of the thing that was said, and it wasn't like I said something about Serena. I just kind of made a comment about something that we were going to be doing on a certain day. When she felt the impact, initially, and I don't know about you, but I can say from me personally, you go back 20 years. If somebody had done something and I'd felt that impact, I wouldn't even think about it. I'd have been like, what the fuck do you mean? Like, you know, like I would have fired back. And like my response would have been like, especially in that situation where great example, because I didn't know that there was any impact because I didn't know the situation fully to understand what impact was involved in it. I'd be like, whoa, what did you, hold on, like, I didn't know any of that. Like, what, but now I've been impacted and I'm like, what the hell, why are you, like, that's how these sorts of things escalate. So it is important to notice when you have that impact, and that impact might be, as said, like it might be mental, like you're like, there's something here, like I'm wanting to fire back. There's something like not okay with how this has been impacted. Could be emotional, and we might be feeling some kind of way about it. We might feel it through physically, like there's a tension in our stomach or in our chest or in our shoulders or our neck or something. There's lots of these clues that when something impacts us that somebody else has done, we want to be looking for, what are the signals? What are the things our body is telling us is going on? Now, you can't stop the feeling. Well, you can repress the feeling. You can't stop the feeling when it's present. But what you can do is you can notice that it is there, and you can give yourself some space to put the needs lens on the situation. Because what's happening is, if somebody impacts me, and this is what I do in these situations, what we both do in these situations now, is that if somebody impacts me, I'm feeling some kind of way about that impact. What I do is I note it, like I can feel it. And when I feel it, I kind of take that moment to breathe and pause. And what I do is I notice what needs of mine have been impacted by what this other person has said or done. Now, one of the needs that is going to be up almost certainly is emotional experience and expression. I might give myself a moment to process, like feel how I feel about what has just happened. A lot of the time it might be a value need thing where they've said something, and how I'm interpreting what's been said, or even what has explicitly been said, is that you're not good enough. Like the example I just gave with the ex-partner of mine and what he said to me, like I could have taken that to be like, I'm not good enough, I'm not sexy enough as I am. Value need in that moment, without needing to do anything externally, I can say, okay, you know you're good enough. You know that you don't need to be a certain size in order to be sexy. You know, like this is his stuff. It's nothing to do with you, but you are worthy. You are good enough. You are beautiful as you are. Or your body shouldn't matter in terms of these situations. Like if you're in a loving relationship, like there are things that you can say to yourself to support your value need in that situation. Like I am worthy of having somebody who finds me attractive, even if I put on a few pounds, even if I put on a lot of pounds. Like I should be with somebody who cares about me and loves me for me, irrespective of what I look like on the outside. It might be my acknowledgement need that is up. This is a big one that tends to happen in these situations, is that when I have been impacted and I'm feeling a kind of way, one of the things that really helps for me is to get some empathy. the other person isn't probably not going to be able to empathize with me right now because they don't even know, either they don't know they've done something or they don't care about the fact they've done something because they're in their own stuff. And when in that moment, when I take that hit, there's a part of me that wants to be heard about the fact that this feels bad right now. And it's like, and one of the things I can do is I can empathize with myself. It's okay to feel the way you feel about this right now. Like what's just happened is not okay. And how you're feeling is valid. This is how anybody would feel in this kind of situation. You have every right to feel upset right now. I can do that for myself. And the same thing with any other need that is up, any need that has been impacted by in that moment. I can take a moment in that moment to check in with the need and do something to support that need and rebuild it. So if you imagine it's been dropped down by the impact by the other person, I can do something to build it back up. Now, it's really important to say in this, you doing that does not negate the impact to you from the other person or the responsibility for them to address what has happened, to apologize, to make amends for what's happened. It doesn't mitigate any need for accountability or anything like that. All you're doing is you are re-resourcing yourself and dealing with it. You're healing the impact for yourself without the need for their involvement so that you can then respond in a way that is in alignment with you, not as a reaction to your unmet needs, which often pull the strings under the surface.
I think an interesting thing with the situation we were talking with about us is that it legitimately took about a full day for the entire thing to come about.
Right.
And it was, something was said and immediately I was like, oh, and I felt an impact, but I didn't know exactly what it was. Like I felt it and I'm like, something doesn't feel right. And for whatever reason, I was trying to figure out what it was. And I was like, I need to voice that, like, I realize something is off here. Mm-hmm. And so I did. I was like, what do I need right now? All right. I need to tell her that something doesn't feel it doesn't feel in alignment. Right. And I was like, I don't quite know why, but like, I'm having real tough time with this. And at that point I didn't realize what it was at all, but it was like, okay, I met that need. Like I need to acknowledge there's something not right. So I did that and then everything was fine. And over the night I was like, what was that? I went into it a little deeper and I'm like,
you should some time to process.
I took some time to process it. And then at that point I was like, I actually told Claire that morning, I was like, I wasn't sure whether to come to you with this mentally. Obviously I knew that this was how we solve our conflicts.
Right.
But I was like, I know you're in a space, I'm in a space, neither of us are completely 100% physically right now. Like there was a lot of things going on. Yeah. There's moving, there's the new business here. Like there's so much going on. Yeah. I'm like, well, I realize what it is. I know her intention wouldn't have been that she sat on the button without realizing the button was there type of thing. And then I'm like, no, this will create a niggle. It will, like, this right now is a film that can easily be picked up, thrown away if we deal with it. Yeah. Or it can be something that lays the groundwork for the next time that if something came up that it could be triggered. So I brought up, I'm like, you know what? Like this happened and it did have this impact. And I completely understand from your perspective what, why this may have happened. Right. And it was just like, normally I'd be like, oh no, it was why bring yesterday into today, because tomorrow this could be a bigger issue if I don't deal with it right now. And there was such an understanding from both sides. It's like, well, yeah, obviously this is how this happened because I didn't know the button was under my pillow on my seat. Like if I had known that, I would have sat in a different seat. Like something that. And
it was like, and interestingly enough, one of the first things I said once Serena had shared everything was going on was like, thank you so much for telling me this. Like, of course I understand why this felt the way that it did for you. And what it did was we were able to identify some things that both of us needed. And it was like, how do we find ways of doing that without compromising what the other one needs?
Yeah. And like you said, I mean, you got to go back about 20 years ago with your outburst. I'd say probably about 5 years ago, and I might be generous there in the 5 years. I would have immediately been like, because of the context of the conversation we were having and what it had to deal with, I would have been like, probably in like that fuck you state.
Right, what the fuck?
I would have gotten angry, and it's like, there's been a lot of work to get me to remove that immediate I was always fight over flight. Like I'm gonna go in for it because we're gonna like, and with the content of it, I feel like I probably would have done something that would have meant that we wouldn't be recording today.
Right.
Like, and I'm not saying that I would have blown up the friendship, but like there would have been a little bit more to talk. Or
it would have taken some more to get to resolve and heal it, to get to the other side, because how the reaction would have also impacted needs over here. So we would have had to have dealt with that. And it's interesting because we also had interestingly enough, one in the other direction, that came up like earlier in the week about something that happened over Christmas. And it was interesting because we hadn't seen each other for like 10 days. So it had been kind of bothering me, but I also knew where she was at. I'm like, I'm not going to message her about this. And I'm not going to, because like, there's no point in me, like I can meet my needs in such a way that this isn't affecting me as much as it would have done 10 years ago. But also there's no point me mentioning it at a time when she doesn't have the capacity, because chances are it's going to land in such a way that possibly will trigger stuff she's got going on. And we're going to end up back and forth about it. And it was interesting, like, because when I raised it with Serena, the curiosity was there. Like that doesn't seem right. Like what's going on? Like what's going on there? And just asking that question of what's going on there, Serena brought something to that I hadn't even considered. She was like, oh, I think it might be to do with this. And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, that wasn't something that so I can't rationalize something if I don't have all the information. If I'd just gone in and attacked Serena and been like, you did this and this did this and this made me feel this from those unmet needs, then there wouldn't have felt like a safe space to be able to go, well, this is why. Because I came at it with curiosity and be like, hey, what's going on? What's going on here? There's something that doesn't feel quite right. She was able to go, oh, I think this might have something to do with it. And there were other things in there as well. But like this was one of the things. I'm like, oh, yeah, I probably intellectually knew about it, but it never would have occurred to me that might have been relevant to the situation.
Yeah, being able to pull those intellectual things out in the chaos of
an emotional
adulting.
Reaction. And an emotional reaction of like unmet needs. So one of the important things is to be like, what's happening at the moment is like something has happened from here to here. It's impacted here. Now, what I want to do is I want to make sure that I am taking care of my own needs. Now, I shouldn't have to do this. Someone else shouldn't impact me. So it's okay to be frustrated about that. It's okay to be disappointed about that. It's okay to be angry about these things. That is something that's part of that processing. It's part of those meeting those needs. And said, it doesn't mitigate the need for apology. It doesn't mitigate the need for accountability. But what it does is it means that you have the resources to be able to respond in a way that feels in alignment for you, not as a reaction to your unmet needs. Because so often we don't think about the reaction. We're so busy, we react from the feeling that's present. And it's like, it's okay to feel how you feel, but take a moment to feel how you feel and allow yourself to process that rather than firing from that, I'm feeling this thing. Like there's a difference between I'm going to allow myself to feel how I feel. And there have been times where it's like, we've been having a conversation and Serena said something or I've said something and it's like the other person has started to tear up and it's like, because I'm feeling how I'm feeling as a result of this conversation right now. I'm not reacting from how I'm feeling. I'm not using that as the fuel to fire something back at you, but I am going to process how I'm feeling. And the two are very, very different. So the first thing is to, by doing that, you're going to be responding according to, it reminds me, I heard Marshall Rosenberg many, many years ago say that never to let an authority figure cause you to either submit or to rebel. A lot of the times what happens is when somebody does something to us, or if we got like somebody's telling us we can't do something, we do it because we're told we can't do it. Or we submit and do it if we don't want to do it. And what he was basically saying is do what is in alignment for you, irrespective of what somebody else wants you to be doing or not. So it's like, just like, do you. And if that is in alignment with what somebody else wants you to do, fine. And if it's not in alignment with what somebody else wants you to do, fine. But you're doing you no matter what. And that's the thing, is that when we take care of our own needs in the context of conflict, we're not allowing somebody else's behavior to change us and have us react in a way that isn't in alignment with ourselves. What we do is we take that moment to be like, okay, I'm still upset about what's happened. You can still be upset about what's happened, but you're not reacting from that unmet need. You're communicating about how the impact to your needs has affected you. And that's a very different situation.
And I feel like something that's been really helpful for us is when you take that pause, if it serves you and if it's present, to be like, I'm feeling some things right now. I'm just taking a moment to process them. So there's not that weird, like, oh, are they gearing up to shoot back at me? Like, what's going on? Just being like, you know.
I'm just trying to figure out what's going on for me right now.
Yeah, like just, you know, like giving.
If you've got the capacity to do that.
And that's what I said. If you got, like, if it serves the situation, because not every situation that is necessary, helpful, or any of the things, sometimes you just need to stop and pause, or maybe take yourself out of the situation, or whatever it is. In our relationship, for me, it's like, I don't want her brain to be filling in all the things that are going on in my brain. Yeah. So it's like, I'm a bit frustrated right now. I'm trying to collect my thoughts.
Yeah.
Like, and just pause. And for me, that takes a little bit of the spinning out of my head, because I'm like, all right, at least I'm not worried about what she's thinking about what I'm thinking.
And in those moments, like, it would be very easy for me to want to like jump in and fix it and be like, I'd be like, oh no, I didn't mean it, blah, 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 blah. And actually, no, what I'll often do is I'll let her be where she's at, and once she's like, it's almost like, I don't know, it's almost like a computer. It's like, I'm processing, you can't press any of the keys right now. And once they're like, it's like
my little swirly do is going.
I'm like, the spinning beach ball. Yeah. It's like, don't bother trying to click anything right now, because it ain't gonna work.
And it will actually jam things up and make it like,
exactly
what would have taken 5 minutes is now going to take 2 hours, because you had to click the button 15 times.
And you have to wait for like 26 windows to appear, disappear, minimize, whatever. But that is literally what it is. It's like, we need to wait for the spinning beach ball to go away. Okay, right, now we're at a point where we can carry on the conversation. And in that situation, I could do the same thing, where it's like, okay, I'm feeling a kind of way about what she's just said. She's frustrated right now. Oh God, what did I do? And I then go into, okay, what needs are up for me right now? My love and connection need might be up, because I'm concerned about our connection in this moment. It might be my value need. Oh God, I've done something wrong. I haven't done it. I'm not been good enough in this situation. It might be that I'm just processing my emotions. Like, I feel bad because I've obviously said something that has caused some kind of impact. I allow myself to feel sad about it. Like you can do the same thing no matter which side of this you're on. And a lot of the time, it's not as simple. Like, very rarely is it just one person's done one thing. Like, normally there's multiple things that are at play. I mean, I think the reason it isn't that way often with us is because we clear things so frequently. So it's like, it's not up unless it's the thing that's up, and then it's cleared, so it's not up.
Yeah, it's not compounded. It's not. Yeah.
There's not 100 things that are like, well, we were watching an episode of The Big Bang Theory last night, and
that's odd. We're back into that show again too.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Oh, we were watching an episode, and Leonard and Penny go to Sheldon to apologize, and Leonard's like, we came to apologize. He was like, oh, for borrowing my suitcase like
16 years ago.
6 years ago, yes. Yeah, exactly. And he was like, well, no, for what just happened. He said, oh, I thought you were going in order. Like, and it's that same thing. Like, if you don't have lots of things in order, you can just deal with the one that's present in front of you.
That's weird. Like, that's really weird, because I haven't watched that in
a while.
A long while.
Yeah, that's funny. So the first thing is to take care of, like, in those moments where you're impacted or you're feeling the consequences of the impact that you've had to the other person, take that minute to take care of your needs in that moment. And you can do things that are relatively quick and easy, that don't take a lot of time, that don't take a lot of effort, that don't take a lot of space, but mean that you are resourcing yourself and supporting yourself in the context of the conflict. So the first thing is that, and then what you can do is that once you are then more resourced, you can then communicate often more effectively about the situation. Be like, I'm like, the situation that I was talking to Serena about, I was like, this has been really bothering me. Like, I'm not like reacting from being bothered, but I'm communicating that this has been really bothering me for a few weeks because this is what's up right now. And like, like why, what was that? Why was that? How was that? Like, and then able to go, that's not something that works for me in this relationship. So I want to I want to make sure we're on the same page as far as that's concerned, which we were. Shocking, I know. But it really was a question of like, you can still communicate what's going up without reacting from that place. Once you have given yourself time to process how you are feeling, that processing how you are feeling is part of that meeting those needs in that moment. It's like, if I'm feeling angry about this thing that's going on right now, I got to process that anger. I can't just like, otherwise the anger is going to be present in my response. So I have to take that time to process that anger.
And also trying to figure out what other triggers might be at play. Because a lot of times, like, especially in this situation, I know we're being slightly vague and we're doing that purposely on this one. Had there not been any communication, like, this wasn't going to go away.
No.
And this would have changed. This is one of those things. This could have completely changed our friendship, because Claire, in this situation, Claire would probably mentally and probably internally know, like, that was, like, the way it came across was not what the intention was. And there, like she said, there's also factors on my part. It's like, no, my brain went through this. Like, this is what my process was. And she was like, I didn't know that was a problem.
And stuff that was triggered from other people and other relationships in the past.
It was, I could have taken that like, oh, well, now you're doing what everybody else has done. And it's like, no, you need to, like, that pause, that taking the moment for yourself is the, like, right, this isn't that situation. Right. This is, okay, I know this has bothered me in the past. So I didn't come to her in my response being like, well, this has been my life. And
this always happens to me. I'm like, oh, not
it
with
was
me.
Like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. This triggered me from this, and this, and this is actually why this happened. Like,
right.
It's.
So the first thing is you want to remove the immediate trigger, and it's not about dissolving it so it's not present, because as I said, you still need to address what's happened, but it's about removing the impact of the trigger in your system, and that triggered reaction in your system is coming from those unmet needs. So once this happens, what you want to do is take care of those needs so that you can still deal with what's happened, you can still address what's happened without reacting from that trigger of those needs being unmet. And then the thing that can be very helpful, if you've got the capacity to do that in these situations, is to also recognize where the other person's needs are at. Like, once you can put the needs lens on yourself and go, whoa, what's going on right now? Okay, it's these needs. I can do this to meet this. 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 Okay, I'm feeling more resourced. Now, at that point, you can then also put the needs lens on the other person in the situation. Now, it's important to recognize and remember, it's not your responsibility to meet their needs for them. However, if you are aware of the needs that are up, what you can do is you can communicate in a way which is not likely to trigger those same needs further. So, for example, and you might even want to acknowledge, like, I get you might be feeling this right now because of this and this. I just want to assure you that's not what's going on here. That's not how I am. I'm actually coming from this place. But for example, like, if I knew in the situation that we were just talking about, like, if I know what's going on here, I can be like, okay, I can communicate what's going on with me without being like, so for example, if Serena's value need was up in that moment, which I actually think it was one of the ones that was present. If I know that her value need is up, and I come at her from well, I'm feeling really bothered because you did this. Like, how could you have done that to me? Like, what were you thinking? Like, those things, ding, ding, like, it's going to trigger those needs. There are ways of communicating. Now, you don't have to do this, but if it's someone that you love, why would you not want to do that? Like, I want to communicate in a way which feels supportive to both of us, even if I'm the one who's been impacted. Like, I don't want to be like, I want to get my needs met, and I don't care what the impact is to you, because that's not a self-first way of doing things. But generally speaking, I want to do it in a way that works constructively for both of us. So when you are aware of that, you can start to communicate in a way. Now, as I said, it's not like going, okay, this need, and this need isn't being met. So if I meet that need, and that need, they're going to be fine. That's not it, because it's not your responsibility.
And that doesn't actually work, because then it gets into red spectrum and
codependency and a whole bunch of messy stuff that's not very helpful. But I think that the important thing is to recognize where somebody's triggers are. Like if you know somebody well, and you know the needs of theirs are up, you also know how to communicate. You can find ways of communicating that aren't going to trigger the needs that are already up for them. And that can be very helpful and constructive when it comes to dealing with these conflicts. So there's a couple of examples that kind of come to my mind. As far as we've talked about one of ours, but one of the examples I've shared with you before on that incident where I went for coffee with my grandfather, and he said something that was pretty derogatory towards me. And here is somebody, so this is my love and connection need was up, because this is somebody whose opinion like the connection was important and opinion I valued. So my value need was up. There was a whole bunch of needs that were up. And when he sort of said to me, and you help people with their relationships, as he did, in that kind of derogatory tone, that I mentioned in the past, it was like my inner teenager came roaring up inside of me and wanted to like verbally eviscerate him, because she was so hurt and upset and angry about what had happened. That was those unmet needs. So me taking that moment and going, it's okay, I've got you. You have every right to feel the way that you're feeling right now. You have, like, what was just said was completely out of line. I understand why you're angry, and it's okay. Like, you know you're good at what you do. You don't need him to believe that you're good at what you do in order for you to feel valuable. Like, I could have that conversation with myself, which is why I took a moment in that situation. And I said, I didn't come here to be judged, and I didn't come here to judge you. I think I said the other way around. I didn't come here to judge you, and I didn't come here to be judged. So but that was me acting in alignment with who I wanted to be in the world, not reacting to the impact that his choices had on me. And it meant that I was able to walk out of there without further impact to me of the situation blowing up and me needing to address it again. We've talked about like various situations between the two of us, but I actually think that there are lots of instances in this where one of the things that comes to mind is actually an old work situation where I had a boss who said something incredibly inappropriate to me and shouted it across the office. And in that moment, the interesting thing was I didn't know about needs in that moment, but I took that moment to pause, and mentally there was a part of me that was aware of like some of my needs. I'm like, okay, if I just fire back at my boss, I might get fired. Like, it's probably not a good idea. I don't want to react right now, but I need to get myself out of this situation. I need to be safer. I'm around this person's not safe. That was when I just walked out of the office. So I took that. I'm like, okay, what do I need to do to meet my needs right now? I'm just going to remove myself from the situation. And that's what I did. I see this a lot of the time with, like I had a client where this came up with a neighbor where they had a shared walkway, and this neighbor was a nightmare. And the woman was trying to have backyard work done, and she needed access to this. And the neighbor was a little Karen-y, let's just say it. Very unpleasant and very problematic. And what happened was that every time this neighbor said something to this client of mine, it would impact her, and then she'd want to fight back. She's like, no, I shouldn't have, like, this is a shared area. I should be able to use this kind of thing. She's right. It was a shared area. But if she fired back, this other person would then get more obstinate and more obstructive. And so what we did was, like, in those moments, what's happening? This is this need. Okay, how do I meet that need? How do I meet that need? How do I meet that need? What is it that this other person is feeling right now? And if I come at it from this point of view, if I trigger their stuff, it's going to make it harder for me to navigate this and create a resolution that I'm going to get happy that's going to work for both of us.
Something that just came up is it actually came from the first letter we wrote together, which is Claire stopped me at one point after the 5th revision that was still just seething, and she's like, what's your goal here?
What's your outcome?
What's your outcome? And I'm like, well, to have this and this. And none of that was to berate this person, yell at that. Like, it was like, I just want this. And she's like, oh, is that gonna get it? No. Like, It's like really focusing, like, do I want to just have this be done and over with, or do I want to go and throw down the gauntlet and have a fight? Like, if that was my goal, like, I don't know why that would ever be my goal, no. But I
think that, for example, you might want someone to be aware of the extent of the impact that they're actually, that might be part of your outcome. It's like, I want to know that I've told them the extent of the impact to me. Now, there are certain situations in which doing that, if that's your outcome, is you want them to know the extent of the impact, great. That's how to go about doing it. If your outcome is to get them to do this, this, and this, you communicating all of this to them may not be your best way to get them motivated to do this, this, and this. And the most important thing is, where are your needs in this? And that was the thing, is that Serena's needs have been impacted by this situation. I'm like, right, first things first, we've got to take care of your needs. And part of that letter writing was emotional experience expression, was like getting out, venting out how she felt, like acknowledgement, having conversations with me where I'm like, yes, you were like, what you're feeling is valid. This is a human response. This is not acceptable. All of those sorts of things. And doing that for herself as well. Going through that. And then once she was at that point, what is going to meet your needs best in how you respond to the other person? Because I know that I have learned that sometimes how I want to respond from my unmet need is the thing that will give me more impacts from unmet needs. I'm like, I don't want to deal with that shit anymore. Like, the amount of pain I have caused myself, because not intentionally, because I didn't know any differently, is that because I have reacted from my unmet needs to somebody else, which has then created an unmet, like another thing that they fired back to me, which has created another thing that I fired back to them. And I've wasted so many hours of my life in that. And that doesn't help my needs. And the key thing is that how somebody responds in these situations also indicates how much you trust them to be close again. Like, if you respond from this way, I know there are certain people I could say the same thing as I said to Serena, and they'd be like, so? I'll be like, bye. Truth. Like, we talked about the relationship orbits. They get further away. The more that you can take these conflicts and deal with your unmet needs so that you can have a more constructive conversation. It's not about repressing how you feel. I can't impress upon you enough. This is not about repression or suppression. This is about fixing the ship. It's fixing the ship. It's basically going, it's like somebody else over here, like it's blown off one of your, I don't know, your blasters on the left-hand side, and it's you going into the spares in the engineering section, go, okay, we've got a spare blaster here, we're going to put it back on, wrench it on, okay.
And in that process being like, this is a pain in the ass,
yes,
I shouldn't have to be doing this. Like, in acknowledging and speaking those things. So it's like, there's so many times I put things in my head like that, and it's until I speak it out, and I'm like, oh, I can hear myself now. Like, this, yes, I'm right, or I'm wrong, or this, like... saying it out loud or saying it to myself has actually cleared it up a little bit more. Yeah. Like,
it's not okay that this person has shot my blaster off the side of my ship. And
I need a blaster.
So I'm going to put it back on. I'm not going to, because a lot of the time people go, you shot the blaster off my ship, and they'll be like, well, you shot the engine off of the so-and-so, and you should fix mine, but no, you should fix mine. And it becomes like unmet needs screaming at each other.
6 months later, you still don't have a blaster because you're fighting over the fact, like...
And you wasted 6 months trying to get them to do it for you. Now, the good thing is once you resource yourself, you can communicate with them and be like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Can I pay for the blaster? Can I pay for the repair work? I'm so sorry. That was completely on me. Or they can go, well, screw you, I don't really give a shit about that. And we're like, okay, in which case you go by and you go much more distance in the relationship orbits. The person who's like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Thank you for telling me about this. Thank you for letting me address it. If I pay for the blaster, would that feel good to, does that feel like, I'm like, I just want to make it right. I want to make amends. I want to buy you some flowers as well as buy you a blaster. We get some weird ass metaphors on this show. I'm not going to lie. But I think that once you have healed, not fully healed, but once you have addressed for yourself the impact that you've had, then you can communicate it, and how that communication is responded to tells you how close this person gets to be in your life. And the truth is that, like with Serena and I, if somebody is someone who you want to be close, the second Serena told me what was going on, almost the first words out of my mouth were, "Thank you so much for telling me that. I'm so sorry. If we did it this way, if we did it that way, would that help for you? Like, would that solve the situation?" But the thank you is the important part, because that's someone who wants to know how to do it in a way that works for both of you. And we talked about this in the friendship series. But you want to be around people who want to take responsibility for themselves and create something that works for both of you. And if they don't do that, that's where your relationship orbits come in, and they go bye-bye. And off they go, floating off into the atmosphere.
It doesn't have to be that difficult. Like, and that's the I mean, well, shit, it really is that simple. Like, this is one of those situations. It's like, I know a lot of people who are like, oh, I hate fighting, I hate drama, I hate conflict. And they are the people who are like at the helm of it. And it's like, okay, well, I know sometimes it's not as simple as deal with what's up, but there's a lot of times we get into it and it's like, there's this conflict here with this, and 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 then we're adulting, and then we have work and life and all of these other things. So it's like you have 46 things up right now.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, what's up for me? Okay, I'm going to deal with this one. Here we go. And you had to clear like a conflict bubble almost. Like, I feel like if you're starting from scratch, it's going to feel kind of overwhelming, because there is some probably healing that needs to be done, whether it's
there might be a hard conversation that's involved, and we talked about that takes energy and effort.
Like, there's a process to it. So it's not, I mean, Claire and I have been doing this for years, so we're at a point where it's easy. It was not always easy, and it took a couple of really kind of like hard, uncomfortable conversations for us to realize, like, no, we've agreed this is a relationship that we want, and we want one of communication and of understanding and of doing things in self-first ways and making it work for both of us, or it's not going to work at all. Like, those simple concepts are really helpful in conflict, because they're...
Well, then if you learn to clear the small conflicts, like we talk about clearing niggles, like that's basically what those are. Like, those niggles generally are like micro conflicts. And if you clear those, one, you learn about the other person, because it's like, oh, here are the things that work for you. Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, that doesn't work for you. Great. Thank you for letting me know. Like, I'll learn not to do that in the future. But also it then prevents those from building and compounding into the larger conflicts. And that's the reason that a lot of the time the conflict can be so explosive.
Sure. Yeah, explosive. I think explosive is the actual word, but
explosionary. I kind of like that though. It's my new word.
Too bad we cleaned up all the glitter.
Only because I'm moving.
Yeah. If this was like 2 weeks ago, well, I wouldn't have emergency glitter. Well. But yeah.
I've forgotten what I was saying now.
About the explosionary.
Yeah. A lot of the reason that that things are so explosionary is because it's not just this that we're reacting to. We're like, if you imagine, like, we go back to the Star Trek ships analogy, and it's like you've had a huge laser blaster take out a side of the hull, and then another one's taken out the engine, another one's taken out the dock. I don't even know what the parts of a spaceship are. And then what ends up happening is that this tiny little thing, like a teeny tiny little laser, goes past and it just grazes something, but it was in a particularly vulnerable spot, and the whole ship falls apart. Like, you're not reacting to that last thing, you're reacting to the unmet needs of all the other things that have happened. And that's why a lot of these things get these kind of explosionary reactions, because it's not just like there's unmet need on 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 unmet need. And that is what, and so often this is what most people don't realize, is that people think need stuff is conscious. And the vast majority of what goes on with needs is subconscious. Most of the stuff that's the unmet needs are pulling the strings under the surface, and our conscious brain has no clue about it. And so it's like you think in that situation like, well, I'll be able to react to just what's in front of me because that's what that's what a rational human being would do. No, that's what a human being who doesn't have anything else up would do because that's the situation. But if you have all these other things that have impacted your needs, those are going to be speaking because needs trumps almost anything else. They're going to be screaming to get met. They're going to be calling for your attention. They're going to be adapting your behavior and your responses and your reactions, whether you are aware of it or not.
And we're going to be doing an episode on that coming up because we have quite a few examples of that, of where it, the compoundedness all of a sudden led to like, we weren't even talking about that and now we're fighting about something different.
Right.
So.
Exactly. So anything else for today?
No, we have 2 more in this series, so we will get it in then.
Absolutely. And we've got more to come. I'm like the next episode I'm really looking forward to, because this is like when we specifically have a certain kind of situation, like there's 3 really specific approaches that can really help. So the next session is like a real kind of how-to, which can be really helpful to apply when these sorts of situations come up. So I'm really looking forward to that. But I think that's it for today. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. We're sending you lots of love. Remember to stay safe, and between now and next time, to continue to meet your own needs. Bye.
Bye, friends.
That's it for today.
If you like what you heard, please subscribe, rate, and give us a written review,
as it will help more people find us.
And remember, the first step in resolving any conflict is to take care of the needs of yours that have been negatively impacted.
Well, shit. It really is that simple.